Welcome, friends, to the insane world of South American politics, where sitting presidents rewrite constitutions to give themselves just a little extra time in office, a military coup gets out-couped by yet another military coup, which then gets usurped by a third military coup, and people vote time and time again to nationalize the oil. Like that's worked out well the last 10 times it's been tried. In this political arena, anything can happen. A guy with a chainsaw and a dream to fire every incompetent public servant gets elected at the same time a communist with a rap sheet comes into power just next door. Like I said, anything can happen, including the ousting of socialist leadership after 20 years in power. Bolivia, it's good to see you again. Congratulations. As of filming this video, Bolivia has just completed the first round of voting for their 2025 presidential elections. The runoff will be held in October between a moderate and right-wing figure. The country has delivered a resounding verdict that socialism is not working for them, and they want to try something different. And guys, buckle up, because if you think reality TV is dramatic, I can almost guarantee that Bolivian politics is crazier. And in this story, the villain gets the boot. So stick around till the end. In just a few months, Bolivia may be like that friend that finally broke up with their toxic ex, and hopefully this potential newfound freedom will swiftly improve the situation on the ground. Welcome to Undoctrination. My name is Maggie, and this week I am so excited to dive into Bolivian politics. I bet you've heard of Bolivia, but do you really know her story? Probably not, and that's okay. Let this video be your introduction. Bolivia is a landlocked country in South America bordering Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, and Peru. I have not been to Bolivia, but I have visited the neighboring Argentine province called Jujuy, which allegedly has a very similar culture and landscape. I ate a lot of stews there. It's very beautiful. But to fill in some of my knowledge gaps, I decided to bring in a friend and colleague who lives in the country, Fabricio Antizana Duran. In April, he reported on the fuel shortages that swept the country leading up to this election. He wrote, "Long lines of trucks and cars stretch through city avenues, with drivers waiting hours or even days for gas or diesel." I'm excited to hear more insights and his outlook on the future in this video. But before we dive into what life has been like in recent years, let's take a little step back. And by a little, I mean to the 1500s. To make a very long story short, Bolivia, like much of the Americas, was conquered by Spain in the 16th century. The Spaniards discovered silver and forced the native population to mine it. Bolivian natives tried an uprising here, the Spanish descendants tried an uprising there, and eventually Bolivia gained independence from Spain in the 1800s. Throughout the following years, Bolivia would experience economic rises and falls depending on how well their natural resources were being utilized and mined. Silver was out, then it was in. Then tin mining became the big cash cow for the country. And the 20th century saw a ton of political instability. There were uprisings, coups, military dictatorships, and a president was even executed in front of his palace by revolutionaries. In the shuffle, many of the big industries were nationalized, meaning the government, unstable as it was, ran much of the mining and extraction of Bolivia's natural resources. After a coup in 1964, the country was under a military dictatorship for nearly 2 decades, until national uprisings led to the party democracy era. During the late 20th century and early 21st century, many of those nationalized industries were privatized, and a constitution was written providing a legal framework for human rights and democracy. But the privatization was not without criticism and backlash. If an industry has been nationalized for long enough, the people began believing that the profits of the land are part of their birthright, and that the land itself can't really be owned by a private entity as it belongs to the people. Enter in Evo Morales. Evo Morales' legendary rise to power and prominence in Bolivia makes sense in the context of the country's history. Morales was an indigenous Bolivian and grew up in abject poverty as the son of llama herders. His childhood was fraught with loss as many of his siblings passed away, and a lot of people related to his story. 60% of Bolivia's population was indigenous, but they had never seen an indigenous leader before. His message that Bolivia belonged to the people really resonated with the voters. The nation is incredibly wealthy in natural resources, but many of its residents are poor. He played on this man of the people sentiment that communists and socialists often deploy during campaigns. Upon his victory, he said, "The time has come to change this terrible history of looting our natural resources, of discrimination, of hate, of despise." During his 14 years as president, he partnered with Economic Minister Luis Arce to nationalize industries and use the profits to fund public spending. And for a time, it kind of worked. Natural gas and other commodities sold by Bolivia were going for a high rate internationally, and the Bolivian government profited off of this greatly. In fact, they ran a budget surplus, all while building out national infrastructure, improving literacy rates dramatically, and bringing electricity to much of the country. But while enjoying the spoils of the good times, Bolivia didn't plan for the bad times, which are almost always around the corner, especially if you're relying on gas prices to keep your country afloat. The price of natural gas crashed in 2014. In fact, it fell by 39% within a year.
Now that's a lot of damage!
Bolivia went from having a ton of money to being in the red. We've all heard the modern fable of the guy who's down on his luck, wins the lottery, and spends all of the money on fun stuff like cool cars and popping bottles at the club, but doesn't invest any of it for rainy days. Bolivia was in much of the same boat, except it affected a lot of people. It was also in 2014 when Morales ran for his third term after rewriting the constitution to make it legal. Eventually, Evo Morales was forced into exile in Mexico after trying to run for a fourth time as president. As all good communist leaders do, he could not give up power. And later in this video, I'll tell you all about how he sabotaged his own movement and allies trying to regain his power. Morales' predecessor, Luis Arce, who was his economic minister during the good times, inherited the very bad times.
And so it is bequeathed.
In recent years, Bolivia has suffered from declining reserves of US dollars, trade imbalances, and inflation. But Luis Arce's political career is a victim of its own design. His refusal to liberalize the economy and do away with his imposed price controls has created widespread shortages, and daily life for Bolivians has become dire. Bolivia has a 25% inflation rate year over year, up from 2% only a few years ago. And in June alone, prices climbed an astonishing 5.2%. I asked Fabricio for his perspective on the economic situation as a young person, and here's what he had to say.
As a young person, I think that the opportunities for us have become more scarce because the inflation rate from Bolivianos to dollars surpassed 100% a year ago. So that makes everything way more expensive. But many Bolivians no longer have access to meats and proteins. So now their main source of protein would be eggs because they can no longer afford to have meat. We can no longer buy tuna fish, for example. For some reason, it became really expensive, more than 200% of its original price, so we no longer have tuna in my household. Also, jobs pay less now because of the inflation, but because it's really hard to take money outside of Bolivia.
And as the Bolivian people have suffered from skyrocketing costs, shortages, and plummeting confidence in the Bolivian currency, the politicians responsible for this mess have been engaging in soap opera levels of drama and intrigue. I hinted earlier at a falling out between the bros, but this relationship takes the enemies to lovers trope and turns it on its head. This is next level backstabbing. Evo Morales, who spent 14 years as president, has been doing the most to tank his reputation recently. Not only was he exiled to Mexico for trying to become the forever god king of Bolivia, but he's also facing charges for allegedly impregnating a 15-year-old girl.
You're still doing the show?
Yes, and you're on it right now.
I think my life's about to be ruined.
And who do you blame for that?
Me. Actually, you.
You blame me.
Let that sink in. Meanwhile, his predecessor, Luis Arce, has been in power, and his management of the economy can be described as someone trying to stop a volcanic eruption by covering it with the lid of a pan. To add fuel to the molten lava, Evo Morales called on supporters to block roads so that they disrupt supply chains and worsen an already apocalyptic economic situation. Not only that, he also told them to boycott voting by casting null and void ballots. And so, an astonishing 19% of ballots cast in this recent election were invalid. The left-wing vote was further split by 2 different candidates, each receiving less than 10% of the vote respectively. One of the left-wing candidates, Andronico Rodriguez, was pelted with rocks as he approached the voting booth on election day for daring to disrespect Evo Morales by running independently. Do I need to say it? This guy has a problem. And he still has a ton of supporters, as evidenced by the success of his boycott, which played directly into his enemies' hands. So, ego problem and poor political instincts, got it. Much of this retained support has been among people who believe that Morales simply did a better job than Arce, and that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the ideology. This is supported by the fact that things were kind of good under Morales' leadership, at least at first. But attributing this to the stunning and brave leadership of Morales, as opposed to the favorable winds of global gas prices at the time, is not seeing the full picture.
It's all because of me.
A lot of socialist and communist leaders like to blame outside forces for their failures, but more capitalistic societies are able to withstand changes in the weather. They're more nimble than restrictive economies. It takes a lot of hubris to centrally plan an economy, and things always go wrong in the end. So what happened with this election? There are 3 other candidates you should know about. In third place was Samuel Doria Medina, who clearly styled himself after Milei with the slogan, 100 days, damn it. He was a perennial candidate and businessman, but the lore on this guy is insane. Isabel Debre wrote for the Associated Press, he survived a plane crash in 2005, a kidnapping by a Peruvian guerrilla group, and bladder cancer. And he also claims to have survived a lightning strike, which, according to the Andean worldview, grants him wisdom and powers of divination. Unfortunately, our mystic millionaire did not win, but it would have been cool for the plot if he had. In second place was Jorge Tuto Quiroga, who became president of Bolivia in 2001 after his running mate had to leave office. In him, we have another alleged Javier Milei acolyte. He said he plans to use, quote, a chainsaw, a machete, scissors, and whatever else you can find to cut down the size of public spending. Interesting energy you're bringing to the function, Tuto. And in first place was former mayor, Senator Rodrigo Paz. Paz is the son of a former far-left president who was exiled to Spain during the military dictatorship. In departure from his dad's progressive ideology, Paz promoted himself with the slogan, capitalism for all. And based on his surge in the polls, people are desperate for this kind of messaging. However, he is proposing a more moderate approach to the economy and wants to rely on IMF loans rather than selling lithium reserves to rescue the country from debt. As an outsider, it seems like the country is sending a signal. We want freedom. I wondered if Fabricio felt the same.
Yeah, so there's the Milei phenomenon which is going on all around the region here in Latin America. So people are starting to listen about the ideas of liberty, freedom, private property, open commerce. Many people have been asking for free markets, capitalism, which is insane. In fact, we had a candidate, Jaime Dun is his name. He was supposed to be in the elections, but he was boycotted. And he was bringing full-on private property, free markets, and many people were going to vote for him. He had a lot of support, but unfortunately he was brought down. We've been hearing about the ideas of liberty in the political spectrum. But more so, right now people, if you go to speak with a Bolivian on the streets or anywhere, they want order. They want order, they want security, and they want stability.
It's a story that's been repeated frequently as of late. A country experiences the rare ups and frequent devastating downs of central planning and ultimately bears the brunt of economic consequences. In response to rapidly accelerating poverty, shortages, and inflation, Bolivians chose to do something incredibly brave. Freedom is not an assurance that someone will take care of you. It's not a promise that you'll enjoy the spoils of your neighbor's successes, but it is an assurance that the government won't stand in your way. They will let you create a better life. You're not forced to live in poverty. And for people who have lived under communist and socialist regimes, this is worth more than gold. I am hoping the best for our friends in Bolivia. Everyone deserves the chance to make something of their lives. Where communism locks the door and throws away the key, capitalism opens it. You just have to walk through it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're interested in seeing more of my coverage on international politics and movements, I'll have some videos linked down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment with your thoughts. I will see you all next week. Ciao!